Alright, I'm back in Lightroom here, and I'm going to show you a photograph that I took a couple days ago that I haven't manipulated yet. This is a photograph that came right off of the iPhone native camera app, and I chose this photograph because I ended up tricking the camera on the iPhone into taking a photograph where some of the image was like way too dark, and then some was too bright. So this is like part of the shortcoming of digital, or of just any camera really, is that you have to, especially an automatic camera. An automatic camera tries to guess what the correct exposure is going to be in all parts of the image, and what it saw was that this intense light here was coming in, and it just threw it off. So everything else became dark because it was seeing this light right here, and it kind of maybe tried to average like the exposure that everything should be, maybe accounting for the fact that up here things look more probably correct. So it didn't do terrible, but if you look, anything below here is pretty much completely black, or I mean dark. So this is an extreme example of some things that can happen when you're with your iPhone, when you're just taking photographs. If you're not careful about where your light source is coming from, if you're taking a photograph and the light source is directly hitting the camera, then it's going to cause all kind of exposure problems. Just using an automatic iPhone point and shoot click button, you're going to be fortunate if you get the photograph to turn out like you want. In this case, it didn't turn out like I wanted. So what I'm going to do is show you a couple features in the light settings, and I'm going to first, I'll click on that button in the bottom there, just says light, and first I'll look at exposure. And I think what I'll show you is if I go all the way down like this, look at all the detail that was actually there. So I can zoom in and show you, but this is all that was lost by I'm sorry, I keep clicking there. But look, from here down, you see all that information. Now, what happens is I've ended up creating a situation where this area is too bright. And I can go ahead and click on my histogram again, and I think that would be helpful. So remember, with two fingers, you tap once and you get that information up there in the upper left about what, your image file name, and then the date and all that. Click it again and you get this, what's called the histogram. Now, histograms are pretty complicated, and really all I want you to know is a lot more simple than all that could be said about histograms. But I want you to think about it like, on the left hand side, that is where all the darks in your image are, and on the right hand side are where all the lights in your image are. And however much you see this area here, it shows like hills and valleys, and shows the amount of that amount of light, or so that amount of darks or that amount of lights in your image. So look over here. I've got over here on the right, I've got a ton of completely white. You see how it kind of swoops up here? And that means that there's areas in my photograph that are just completely white and completely blown out. On the other hand, over here, I've got no areas that are completely dark, completely black. Well, what I could do, I'm going to turn this on again, is you can watch this in real time. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to just bring it back until you see this hump over here, you see that nice curve. If that curve starts to flatten out like this, look at that. Well, then that means I got way too many blacks in my image. And you can see that in the image. You can't really see any detail. There's literally, actually you see a tiny little bump there because you see the sun is the whites that are coming through. But you have way too many blacks in the image, and that's when I put the exposure to the left with the slider to the left. Now if I move it, what I want to do is move it so that I've got a decent amount of blacks, but they're not all crammed up on one side. I want this right here to be a subtle, nice curve upward and not a straight line, and that will help. So if I do this, now I should be able to see a little bit more detail. I've just increased the exposure by 0.75, and that should help a little bit. Well, I could actually go back and forth with the original. Let's see. That's a setting I wanted to show you later. And how do I get out of that? I'll click done. Scroll down on this, and I can show you. So there's the original, and there's after we used the histogram, and I showed you how to adjust the exposure so that we could see a little bit more of the detail in the darkest parts of the image. So that's the first slider, and it's actually the most important. It's probably the first thing I would do when I was editing an image would be check out the histogram. Again, clicks like 2 clicks with your 2 fingers there. And any image you should do this really. So I'll even go to something I've already taken, and this one's a pretty nice, I took this picture a while back. That's a pretty nice distribution. There's some area here you've got like a ton of lights that have no detail, and I think that's back in here in the sky. I'll double click that. So back in here it's completely white, no detail, but otherwise it's pretty good. What you don't want to have is a situation where it's like completely crammed up on one side, like this or like this. Look how, I mean, that's a bad image, and that's a bad image. So your camera guesses, and sometimes it gets it wrong. This was the original guess of the camera, but if you see it's still crammed up on the left hand side, and what we want is a little bit more of an even distribution. That's better. And there we go. And as good as the image became, it's not perfect, and we can make a few more adjustments in the light settings to help the image become even better.